A long, long time ago, in a village under a mountain, lived a scientist. And he was obsessed with solving reality. He was going to find the answer. And there was an old legend that if one climbed the mountain behind the village and got to the very top, you would have the answer to everything. And so, rationally, he decided to investigate this sort of thing. Why did people think that climbing the mountain would give them the answers? Perhaps it was the perspective that you get when you're higher up. Okay, so he said, then I'll climb the mountain. And he prepared double the rations and double the equipment, and he set off on his journey. But he found that the journey was very, very difficult, and that he was burning through his rations much faster than he had assumed would be possible. And at about halfway, he realized that if he was to go to the top, he would run out, and he would have to come down the rest of the mountain without food. So he said, well, that's fine. I'll just keep going, and if I get scared, I'll come back and I'll be fine. So he continued journeying onwards, and he got to a place where it was cold and the mountain was steep, and he was fearful of injury. But he said, "You know what? This is so important that that I'm willing to risk death, right? And this is very important because everyone else turns back at this point." But that's what he decided his life purpose was. So he continued to climb, and eventually he reached the top. And he was surprised to find that there were already people there. In fact, there were 3 groups of people. The first group he came up to and he said, well, how did you guys get here? You know, how is it possible that you climbed the mountain? It's so difficult. And they said, well, we're theologians. And we climbed the mountain hundreds of years ago, and we've been waiting for everyone else to arrive. And he says, oh, well, that's very odd. These people must be insane. and then he goes and he sees the next group of people, and he goes up to them and he asks them, well, how did you arrive here at the mountain? And what are you even doing here? And they say, well, we're philosophers, and we arrived at the top of this mountain thousands of years ago. And he said, well, that's extraordinarily odd. And they say, and we're still waiting for people to arrive. And so he goes, okay, well, fine. What's this third group of people? And he goes up to them and he says, well, why are you guys here? And they say, well, we're mystics. And we climbed this mountain before time began. And we're still waiting for people to arrive. It says, well, what's up with all of this? Why is everyone waiting for people to arrive? Clearly people have arrived. And the mystics said, well, you see, no one actually has arrived yet as far as we're concerned. And then he looked, and he noticed that the mystics were floating on a cloud about a foot off the ground. And this sort of parable, I guess you could call it, or story has been told like 1,000 times. This idea that when the scientists finally, come to the final realization of reality through their science and their experimentation, that they'll find themselves in the same place that the philosophers were, or if you're a theologian, you say it's the theologians, and if you're the mystic, you say it's the mystics. I'm a mystic. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a philosopher. I guess philosophy has some merit, so I wouldn't say I'm not a philosopher, but I'm a mystic. And the trouble with mysticism is that when you say, oh, I want to see reality for what it is, and when reality unveils itself to you in some sort of mystical experience, which I have had many, the thing that you notice is that words are tools designed to communicate things in the world that are important for survival. They're not truth. And there is many, many, many wordless structures that we shove into the crude instrument that language is. And we invent new words, and we go through paragraphs and books worth of text just to say one thing, and it's never actually said and it's never actually communicated. And people can argue for days and days and days and debate and never come to a conclusion. And this is for one simple reason: reality itself is itself. It's nothing else. Words are descriptions of things you already understand. If I tell you I saw a bear, you understand what a bear is because you've seen a bear, whether it be in photographs or video or whatever, or in person. Then you go, oh, I know what it's like to see a bear. And I say, well, no, you don't know what it's like to see a bear because you weren't there. Like you've never seen a bear in person, let's say. And for the sake of argument, I have. So it's a different experience. And you go, well, I went to the zoo. Well, the zoo isn't really the bear in person, There's walls there. There's controls. The behavior is known. And the real truth is that the root of reality is the experience of reality. It means very little outside of experience, and I think people recognize that. If you didn't experience anything, you wouldn't have the concept of reality. You wouldn't be engaged with the world. You wouldn't be sharing it with other people. You wouldn't have a motivation. Motivation comes from experience. Knowledge comes from experience. Words are just things to communicate things that other people have already experienced. You connect with people that have the same experience you've had because there's actual communication happening. And so, as a mystic, it is very, very hard to put into words information you have. And so you say, well, you need to experience it. And then you say, well, how do I experience it? And the problem is that there is no how. You are. There's no how. You are what you are. I am who I am. Okay? So this is an entirely incorrect concept from the beginning. And so you say, okay, well, this is how you experience it, right? For my mystical practice, out-of-body experience is extremely important. Dreams are extremely important. So I say, okay, have you ever had a lucid dream, for instance? This is like the baseline, it's like the baseline of mystical experience is one of two things: falling in love, okay, or lucid dreaming. And those are basically the only two available to people outside of drugs. And I don't use psychedelics, and I don't recommend people use psychedelics as their entry point. I think that you have to follow your heart when it comes to seeking these things. If you want knowledge that goes beyond what words can comprehend, one must actually have to decide, not on an intellectual level, but on a heart level, on a soul level. One must actually decide that whatever the consequences are, it's fine. It's okay. I can die, It's like the guy climbing the mountain and thinking, well, I didn't plan ahead. Should I go back? And saying, well, you know what? I'll just keep going. Maybe I'll die. I don't know. You die anyways. I mean, it's an obvious conclusion you must come to, is that what is more important? That you merely walk forward in the path that you've been set onto and participate as a gear of society to enrich people who you do not know? Or do you seek truth? You seek truth. That's an obvious answer. And the answer is that the reason you don't seek truth is because you're fearful. Because seeking truth has consequences. You can't go back to society after you know. You can't go back. And society itself would change if everyone couldn't go back. But the problem is that so many people are controlled by fear of what might happen, and oh, they want their retirement accounts and their 401ks and their houses and their cars and their bullshit. And so they can't do it. And so society is dictated by people who don't have wisdom because they're in the majority. And they're controlled by incentive. And I mean literally controlled. Like, give the person the right incentive and they will do it. Does not matter what it is. Very few people are independent of that. And I mean the right incentive. I don't mean just add the number of don't, you know, some people say, oh, I could never be corrupted by money. But could you be corrupted by women? Could you be corrupted by fame? Could you be corrupted by a sense of meaning? Absolutely. Because if you don't know for yourself, you haven't experienced for yourself, you're merely a pawn of whatever thing you place that idea in, that magic in, that motivation in, whatever you value, you're a pawn of if you have not the actual experience. So I make this video as a prerequisite to me talking about mystical experience. Because I think it's very important that people understand no one has actually arrived. And the people who have arrived do not have words for you. They cannot show you. They cannot give it to you. You're a fool if you're asking for them to give you knowledge as if it's something that's a commodity which can be traded, you fool. No. No. It's deeper than that. And if you don't believe it's deeper than that, then go away. I don't want to talk to you. Because you don't understand. How could you say that reality is nothing deeper than a few numbers? How? Tell me. I want to know. How? You can't say that, and you know you can't say that. So leave this place. Reality is something that is majestic. It is indescribable. It is life. It is to be alive and to share the world with others and to love. It is beyond that. How dare you cheapen it? How dare you cheapen it? I wish it was that easy to just take everything that I know that I've experienced and just inject it into people. How it would break their minds and crush them. But it isn't that easy. The world doesn't get better if you do that. It doesn't present any sort of solution. The world isn't magically a kinder place. In fact, it gets a lot worse. Because when things happen that people can't expect, they react poorly. I want to talk about astral projection. And I really hate that it's called astral projection now. I hate that that's a label, because that's not what it is. The astral is one layer, or a series of layers, but one region of the spiritual world. What we should really be calling it is shamanic journeying, or shamanic travel. But New Age and all these other whatever bullshit have sort of attached themselves to these ideas which are beyond the mind of the average person, that are reality shattering. And they have cheapened them into ideas of, oh, it's some whimsical afterlife and nothing ever goes wrong. And no, reality is layered. There is the violent, conflict-filled mortal worlds. And above them, there's the shared heavens. And above them, there is the nature of reality, I guess. Below them is the hells, the attached worlds, where people have become so spiritually attached to ideas that they're dictated by them and rules that they're dictated by them. They have no free will. And then below that, we have the abyss, or the place that souls go to die and be reborn. And the abyss is linked to the heavenly realms. It is linked to the true nature of reality. So it's one great circle. As I have said earlier, the irrational is actually the key to reality. The irrational, not the rational. The rational will tell you about things that have happened and in what pattern they have happened, but will not give you deeper answers. You can look as deep as you want to look, and you will not find a unified theory. It will always break apart eventually. You may find a unified theory for a small period of time, but then it will change. In the same way that the universe came into being, and there was no universe before it, or perhaps there was an infinite number before it. You don't know. It's irrational. And then it established laws so that me and you can play our game in reality. And someday those laws will break apart and a new one will form. And we know that. We know that because the probability of us being in the only universe is absurdly low, to the point where it's not even worth thinking about. And we know that the laws used to be different, because if they weren't different, we wouldn't have a universe. An act of creation is an act of desecration of what used to be. It is a transgression of the current status. Creation is transgression. If you want to see reality for how it is, you need only to go within. People don't believe this at all. I don't even know if the part of the mind that sees truth is even awake in most people. I kind of think it's asleep. I hope that if you're the right type of person, that you listen to me, that I point you in the right direction, and that you take the actions necessary, and that you see the world for what it is. I hope that. But that's rare. So you need to accept that difficulty will come, and you'll have to overcome it, and that's a good thing. I think the next video I'll try and talk about out-of-body experience, but I need to preface this with, this is not for the light of heart. This is for people who have a level of bravery, sort of warrior type animosity. People who are transgressive. It's not for people who want to be right about things and to be correct and have the right definition in their head. You're living by laws and you will be governed by them. In order to not be governed by laws, you must not live by them. You must be transgressive. And the problem is that so few people today who are curious about the nature of reality have any real deep desire to pursue it. Because if they did, they'd already have it, and I wouldn't have to tell you. If someone wants that, there's one of two answers. One is they have not been pursuing it long enough, and the other answer is that they will never achieve it. And the reason they will never achieve it is because they've chosen, that they're unwilling to take the risks necessary to see it. And those of you who are actually willing to see reality for what it is, you will suffer in some way or another. And that is how you will see reality for what it is. Because incarnation is attachment. And to see reality for what it is, you must become something which is okay with detaching from the physical form, is okay with death, is okay with transformation, is okay with seeing the world the way it is. It's the only way. It's the only way.